My name is Linnea Camps. I am one of the judges on the Flash Fiction competition. I have one of the other judges with me today, Madison Scott Clary. As soon as we can make the audio work. Um, our third judge, Cedric, was not able to be here today because work sucked. And it's just how these things have to go sometimes. But we were able to narrow it down to a wonderful selection of stories, and our plan is to read the top contenders, and then Madison and I shall duke it out in a blood battle to the death, and then whichever one is standing will choose the winner. Or we'll just debate over it politely, whichever seems more, logical. Uh,
Is that a thing where we duke it out to the death?
I mean, if we need to, and I can hear you,
Isn't that
yay!
great? Isn't it weird how that works?
It is
Um,
very helpful to be able to hear the person you're doing a panel with. Very helpful indeed. But let me see here. So we essentially have it down to 6 stories that we'll be reading you today out of the 26 submitted, which is wow. Thank you all so much. I was not actually expecting that many stories, so I'm still incredibly pleased about that. But we've only got an hour, so I suppose we should get into reading stories. You want me to take the first one?
yeah, go ahead.
All right, the first one we're looking at tonight is Beginner's Luck by I think it's Michelle Ale. I hope I got that last name right. I'm so sorry if you're watching. Beginner's Luck. Alone on the dining floor, her eyes consume the room. Tablecloths, perfectly ironed, lavender ordained chairs in their proper place, waiting to welcome the evening's guest. Spotless granite floors matched in beauty against the arched window. Candle centered, surrounded by spotless plates and silverware with napkin art. Nora's eyes dance in every direction, scrutinizing everything. Tonight is special. Diners will experience Ma Fulvera's first dinner service under 3 Michelin stars. Her eyes close. Vision of her restaurant fades away. Sloths aren't chefs. They're too slow. Everything'll burn. Springboks. They jump to conclusions too quickly. Riley didn't mean to sound crass. Her words often flew out without her brain noticing. Nora heard it enough times to convince herself it was. No sloth would ever become a chef, let alone a half-decent cook. Takeout and microwave meals wouldn't suffice. The herd wanted something else. The recipe nestled in Nora's 3 claws. The solution for a hot summer night printed black and white. Mango gazpacho. Such a simple dish, the ingredients sat out before her in a line, mimicking the list she so tightly held. Shut it, there's no way she can mess up. It's just a bunch of stuff in a blender. Hazel always sang with support, even when uncalled for. She was good at it, the lark's voice her trademark. Each guest had something to say, support or unintentionally otherwise. The kitchen felt small, crowded, nearly cavernous. Nora took a breath and slipped the apron on. First things first, roughly chopped fresh cilantro. The poke sat patiently at the wooden cutting board. Stems removed. Her knife rocked back and forth, lulling lemony brightness into the air. The herb she slid into the blender was anything but coarse. The knife felt right, motions guiding and graceful. The tiny kitchen became a world away. It became a garden with fresh air and warming sunlight, far away from the apartments, busy streets, and curious matches watching impatient. Each ingredient followed suit: mangoes cubed, ginger peeled, jalapenos and bell peppers perfectly diced, cucumbers skinned and sliced, and finally the onion. Its red skin glistened in the fluorescent kitchen light, a ruby gifted to her. Slice by slice, her eyes filled with tears. A blender full spun in a rainbow until the bits and pieces of her labor became one, smooth and creamy. In 5 glass bowls she divided her creation, topping each one with peppers and a single leaf of cilantro. The once chatting room fell silent. Each creature took spoonful after spoonful, and their eyes breached. Nora, this is amazing! Unbelievable. It must be beginner's luck. Final drops were licked clean off the glass. Transparent, empty bowls sat around her. Nora smiled. The universe waited. She agreed. In a kitchen became where she always wanted to be. her eyes closed, and the visions. Ah, good story. Okay, so I just did a bunch of talking. So,
I
Madison, what is so
Oh,
good
go
about
ahead.
that story? Why is it kind of among our final contenders?
I thought that the story had a good shape for flash fiction. Like it used the space that it had very well. I think that you can only fit so much of an arc, and you can generally only fit about one scene in flash fiction. And I think that it used the idea of being able to have the action going, and then also have all this sort of like thinking about all of the wonderful things that are about food, and the Springboks, leap to conclusions, which I thought was a great pun that I didn't pick up on until you said it out loud. But I thought it was a really good use of space. Um, and
I absolutely have to agree. I mean, and let's be fair too. It's a sloth cook. It is a cute concept.
it really
Like I
is. It
can't.
really is.
I know there. I mean, I know I'm falling into the stereotype too. Oh no, just like this story, but it's a wonderful, wonderful little
Yeah,
story.
yeah, and it's there's like already a whole slow foods movement. Just cash in
Oh,
on
absolutely, exactly. It's perfect. And let's see here. The next story I think we were set to look at is Dave makes some friends. I don't know if you have the ease and ability to quickly pull that up. If not, I can do
it.
more reading. I don't.
I don't know that I have access to Dave Makes Some Friends. Um,
Silly internet. Well, that's quite all right. I don't mind doing more reading. It's not going to hurt me by any means.
I'll pick up the
Painful.
next two then.
All right. Let's see here. Dave makes some friends by Ninakiri Bookworm. Who, let's see here. I don't think. Oh, the unfortunate. He's one of our stream moderators, and he's not here for this one. He's probably just watching for fun. But his story made it. So let's see here. Dave makes some friends. Dave was a typical dragon, from his snout to his tail. He was enormous, had green scales, and spent long periods of time napping in the afternoon sun on a comfortable. Life for Dave was good. But then one day the gold had lost its luster for him. He was stricken by a pervading sense of loneliness and sought out something he realized he never quite had: a friend. Or, at the very least, someone else who looked like him. Dave had to admit that he didn't know many folks who were green, so he had to get creative. Dave rummaged around in his hoard until he pulled out the ingredients he'd need for a spell: a pound of mottled mushrooms, a generous splash of sleep-deprived sheep's tears, and just a pinch of parsley to just bring it all together. He cooked the concoction in a cauldron held gingerly over a fire, stoked from his own breath. Dave stirred the odd mixture slowly with his claw until it changed from grayish green to a deep purple hue. The potion was finally ready. He grabbed the book on the pile of rocks he had set up as a table and blew the dust off the cover eagerly. It had been a while since he had read about them, but the pictures on the cover confirmed what he needed to know. They were green, scaly, and large, a perfect fit for Dave to make some new. He held the book gently above the pot and dropped it into the potion. The pot gurgled and sputtered until out popped a trio of dinosaurs. They looked very confused, so Dave tried his best to break the ice. Hello, it's nice to meet you all. My name is Dave. What are your names? I'm Perry the Pterodactyl, said a dinosaur with large wing hands. You could call me Truck the T-Rex, said the largest with the smallest hands. And I'm Annie the Ankylosaur, who didn't have any hands. Are you a T-Rex too? Truck asked in a gravelly voice. No, I'm not a T-Rex. I'm. But Perry interrupted Dave, shouting, are you blind, Truck? Look at those wings. He's clearly a pterodactyl. Nope, not that either. Andy piped in next. Maybe he's an ankylosaur. You should do have one main spike on the end of your tail. As the dinosaurs bickered, Dave could feel his patience wearing out. I am a dragon, Dave said simply. But the dinosaurs looked even more confused. It was Perry who finally had the courage to ask, what exactly is a dragon? This, he yelled, is a dragon. Dave blew a massive torrent of flame upwards that spiraled out along the curves and edges of his cave. When he was spent, he looked back down at the dinosaurs and saw they looked mad. Truck crossed his tiny arms and said, I don't know if that's how it is where you're from, but nobody likes a show off. And there we go. Dave makes a friend. I can definitely comment on this one. It's
Sure.
such a big setup for such a cute and funny ending. It's like the twist ending that you tend to see in certain flash fiction stories, but much more wholesome and silly.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love
I think that just by virtue of, about how long it takes to tell a joke, flash fiction really lends itself to jokes.
it.
You find yourself you find it really easy to just kind of lean into that format, and that's not a bad thing at all. I also like the fact that of our first two stories here, species has played a big role. I'm always a
Oh
big
yeah,
fan of furry fiction that utilizes species as sort of a core element of the plot.
absolutely agreed. I mean, we're writing about animals. It's good to get to enjoy them being animals.
Yep.
Seems like it's important for a good story.
Mhm.
Well, let's see here. You said you wanted to take potentially the next one. I'm trying to remember where did I put the
Okay,
list?
I Miss Him Too and Last Will and Testament of Q Sharpclaw. Because I think those are the
Perfect.
ones that I really enjoyed.
Yes,
So this
absolutely.
is I Miss Him Too by, I believe, Black Wolf 2 Dragoon. She came to this place again, Aidan thought with dread. He stood by his mother, staring at the same stone that always stood there, etched with writing that to most held sympathy, but to them, their broken hearts. Down there, with soil recently settled, was where his dad lay. His mother took it the hardest, whilst Aidan, he had to be strong for his mother. But though too young to be widowed, she looked thinner than was considered healthy. Dark sags hung beneath her eyes that constantly looked bloodshot, and Aidan couldn't even guess as to how many packs of tissues she'd gone through with her crying. I know, Mum. I miss him too, Aidan told her yet again, but she barely reacted. I love Dad, but you're hurting yourself so much. Please, you need to find some help. He had no idea how he had the strength. Maybe it was his father's genes or his duties as a growing buck, but he wouldn't break down in front of his mother. His time for mourning was done privately. He loved his dad. He missed him just as much as his mother did, but he knew his dad would want him to be strong, to grow into a buck worthy of the name Beck. He would do his father proud. Farron Beck, age 37, 1983 to 2020. Loving father and husband, taken too early by a car crash. Those words must have been etched into his mother's mind, but still she read them over and over again, as if she couldn't believe it. Mom, Dad would hate to see you like this. Still, she didn't listen. She bent down, putting newly bought flowers into the already colorful patch from loving friends and family. It was lovely to see, but heartbreaking for Aidan. He'd put his own down there too, though he wasn't able to grab very many. He wasn't great at flowers. His mother never spoke when she visited Dad's grave. Honestly, Aidan hadn't heard her speak for days now. Please, Mom, speak to me, talk to me, anything. Still, no answer. She didn't even look up at him. Aidan wanted to give up. This was hopeless. She wasn't handling the loss. Slowly but surely, he was afraid that she would die too. The doe moved, shaking her head in misery. Aidan followed close behind. She stopped in front of another mound. Aidan's heart pounded. Mom, please don't do this. Again, she didn't reply. Her eyes widened in horror as if she was seeing something Aidan couldn't. She wailed, holding her hooves to her head, and covered her eyes as her soul-crushing sadness permeated from her. She dropped off her other bundle of flowers and ran, leaving Aidan behind. The young buck shook his head, wrapping his arms around himself as hopelessness set in. He looked at the gravestone and sighed. Aidan Beck, age 18, 2002 to 2020. Beloved son killed by a hit and run. That's all of that
Oh,
one.
that is a story. We just talked about twist endings, and oh, that is a story.
Yep. Yeah, I think that as you said, flash fiction does lend itself to like these little twists at the end, this little volta that they have going on for them, and I think that this one pulls it off fairly well. I think the reason that I voted for this one in particular was that it did kind of fit the whole theme of the month, maybe not necessarily the we didn't really have a theme for the contest, but you know,
Yeah,
it did
exactly. Yeah, we wanted to make it easy for everyone this year, but I get what you
right.
mean. It is October, and that just
Hmm.
there is something
It
to
gets
it
a
where that just right.
yeah, it gets a little spooky. I was not sure if the whole deer get killed by cars was meant to be a joke. I think that that might be like a
Oh,
little tasteless, but I did think that
see,
this one was
I
pretty
didn't
well
even
written.
catch that. Darn.
I
Yeah, man, that
I do
I'll
think
give
that
them
this one
some
was
credit.
pretty. I do
Mm.
think this one was pretty well written, though.
Oh, absolutely. It was very well done. Even just the tiny little moment of like he wasn't good with flowers. He's obviously a ghost. You get
Yeah,
to go back and you hear that, like, and it's just like, oh, that makes so much more
right.
sense now.
Yeah, yeah.
All the
Okay.
little hints along the
Oh yeah, yeah. There's all these like little tiny little things. The fact that she never looks at him and so on. All right. Next up, we have The Last Will and Testament of Q Sharpclaw by Daniel Ivan Harris. I'm not stupid. I know you're only reading this to see what you'll get. But don't feel bad. That's why I'd be reading too. Still, I have cloudy eyes and gray fur. I'm old, and when you get old, you discover the scarcest thing in the world, the full attention of another person. So forgive me for taking my final chance to have your attention. I don't know if I had any last words. I hope I died with dignity and grace, my fur brushed and my claws manicured. I've seen too many others pass after months of suffering alone and half consciousness, their sticky fur wiped quickly by an orderly who has 30 more residents to wash before they can finally go home. But we don't get to choose how we die, only how we live. And I did have a life, didn't I? Love, career, family, travel, I was blessed. If you're reading this, you were part of that life, and I am grateful. You made my many years light and my heart full. I don't have much wisdom to impart. Old people are supposed to lecture the young on how to live, I know, but it's dumb. Age has experience, sure, but my friends who were morons in their 20s are only bigger morons now. Looking back at my youth, I usually think I was wrong about everything. But when I read my journals, I find a keen mind making the best decisions it can, a mind that often understood its world better than I do now. Even if I were to speak in generalities, my advice might be completely irrelevant to your life. Sure, like all old people, I wish I had spent more time with my family instead of working. But if I had lost my job and ended up struggling to feed my children, or even worse, struggling to keep them, would I be any happier now? And of course, I wish I had lived more true to myself. But but does my envy grandchild Payson, if you're reading this, Grandpa loves you, with their bovine, canine, and equine sweethearts, really need me to lecture them on that? You live in a completely different world than I did. I don't know what will lead you to success. I simply hope you do succeed with all my heart. But the truth is, I have no money left to give. I gave it all to college funds and down payments, to wedding presents and baby showers. I apologize for misleading you, but that wasn't my only lie. See, you didn't have to read all this to see what you got. You could have just skipped to the end. Instead, you gave your attention to an old man with no future. You were kind. All I have left to give in return is my love. You made an old man happy one last time. Thank you. Now go live your life the way only you know how.
ugh, we're just keeping on the fields train, aren't
I
we?
we did the whole we did the happy ones, and then we got to do the somber ones. I'm not gonna call that one sad necessarily. I thought that was a really good sort
You
of
are right.
calm
Yeah, because
acceptance.
yeah, because like even saying feels, it's not necessarily sad. It's just it's emotional and
Mhm.
it's quite wonderful. Like they just masterfully ran that ending again.
Right.
As we keep saying, like this twist ending at the end is just wonderful. It's a
Mhm.
very smart use of it. You didn't
Yeah.
even have, I mean, it suits a story so well. You didn't even have to read the whole thing, like
Right.
because you did.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
can't even
It's
lie, as they I mean, we're the editors, so it's
Mhm.
just like, yeah, you're right. We could have just been like, okay, after the first few paragraphs, let's see where this goes. And you
Yeah.
do sometimes flush
Mhm.
pile, but it's like, nope, read the whole thing.
Yep. Yeah. The if I had some notes that I might have made to this, if it were a longer story, I think it works fine as is. Is
Mhm.
that for a um, for a specifically furry fiction? In this case, I felt like some of the furry stuff was just kind of tacked on. Um,
That
I
is very
I
fair.
I don't know what species the main character is. You don't always need to know that. I do not think that that is a hard requirement. But if this were a longer story, that would be something that I would be interested in knowing. Um, and so we kind of get little hints of it there when he's talking about his grandchild and their polyamorous relationship. Like, there's some cool stuff there. It's just it felt incidentally furry, um, which I write
Understand.
incidentally furry stories too. But that's one of the
I think
things.
we
There
all
was
do
like,
sometimes.
mhm. That is one of the things where it's like the first two stories I thought stood out really strongly as being furry qua furry stories. Having character species play a large part of the character.
It's very fair. Well, here, I'll take on the next story, which I think you'll know this one. So I'm very positive this one very much takes on some furry parts of the character. This one is Bird Problems, written by Ferric the Bird. It's hard trying to find a face mask when you're a bird. Beaks were simply not designed to be covered in such a way. The sharp tip of a predatory bird beak, like Arlo had, coupled with the nostril holes further up the beak, were a nightmare to try and engineer something to cover. While other creatures had lips and flesh covering up most of their nose and mouth openings, eagles like Arlo had quite a lot of beak to cover. No conventional mask would work, as they'd either get torn apart by the edges or would simply slide off the smooth surface. The lack of ears to secure straps didn't really help either. Early in the pandemic, it seemed that many were having the exact same problem Arlo was. There hadn't been time for each species to get their own design in stock, leaving most making do with whatever they could find. Regular masks worked fine for a majority of species, but they didn't have nearly enough coverage for Arlo. Tucking his long beak into his shirt left him with a good view of the ground, but not much else. Most other species had adapted by this point, but Arlo was still struggling. His wingtips furiously clicked over every listing on allavian.net, knowing it was the premier shopping location for avians. If they didn't have something, then no other retailer would. But after a few long searches and scrolls down the listings, his search still came up empty. There were some options listed, and one or two actually looked like they could work. They were all out of stock. As Olive reached the end of the page and found no more results, he slammed his wing down onto his computer desk out of frustration. He slumped back in his chair and let out a sigh, gazing longfully at the one mask design he thought might actually work. It was a long tube of stretchy material that fit over the beak like a sock, with two straps wrapping around the back of the head. The tip was reinforced with a leather square, giving it the strength it needed to withstand the beak. The listing even had a little video to demonstrate it, proving that a bird could communicate with it on. Arlo clicked the buy button a few times in desperation, but with no luck. His eyes started to lazily loop around his room. After a moment, they locked onto his old pair of long, elastic workout. Summer was coming, and he needed to buy a new pair anyway. The leg holes looked just about right to fit around his beak. With a few cuts and a little elementary sewing, he fit the final product in place. He probably should have washed them first, but he was too eager to show off his creation to care. Watch out, Walmart! Allo was on his way to shop. He desperately needed some toilet.
I think this story won a lot of points for being very on the nose, right? Because we've got the pandemic,
On
we've
the
got
nose.
oh, got the pandemic, we've got failing to buy a mask because they're all out of stock, and then we've got toilet paper problems. Like I feel like that is a good chunk of 2020 condensed down into a couple hundred words.
we had a panel on writing contemporary fiction about the
Yeah.
pandemic, and I wished for all of my heart, I was like, I want to share this story because it's perfect, but I can't yet. It is so wonderful. It's so relatable and it tackles everything.
Hmm.
Like it's light enough, but it doesn't make you
Right.
still feel bad about the current situation, and it gets to have a happy ending, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and it does have a pretty good arc. It's got, in the same way that I mentioned with Beginner's Luck, it's got like the good arc with like a few tangents without breaking the scene. All the not having ears and everybody else had got them, but now you know. So I think that that was definitely a favorite. We do have one more story to read, um,
Absolutely.
which is The Forever Station by Aidan
Right.
Widmer. The station's lights were on. I swam down the tube from my ship to the station's lock, floating in free fall. When I reached the other end, I grabbed the bar to swing out into the station proper. I found working gravity, and my boots hit the floor with the firm thud of Earth standard. The docking bay I stood in looked like the crew who ought to be manning it had just stepped out for a moment. I suppressed a shiver and checked my suit's readouts. There was air pressure, but the content was all wrong. I kept my helmet sealed and used the speaker system to call out. Hello? Oh! The voice was deafening, echoing from every speaker in the docking area. Someone different. How did you get erased from my files? My suit managed to adjust its own speakers to keep me from being deafened. Are you the station AI? I asked the air. Of course. Toned down, the voice was androgynous and sounded positively giddy. Excitement. Can you direct me to your control center? Were you one of my operators? I admit I don't remember anything about you. Uh, no. I'm not one of your original operators. Why did the AI think I would be someone who had been 100 years dead? I do need to reach the control center, though. It's here. A hologram flashed in front of. Excuse me. A hologram flashed to life nearby, displaying a station map with highlighted paths on it. The route was winding and tangled, running through corridors and maintenance ways rather than the usual transit tube. Is there a tube route that goes near it? There are, but transit tubes are currently inoperable. I've done my best to repair them, but maintaining the living spaces of my residents is, of course, much more important. Right. Residents? You will have to go on foot. Okay. I took a pic of the map and stored it. Guess I should get going. Several hours later, I finally reached the control center, having passed through what seemed like miles of eerie emptiness. Some parts of the station were run down, but most of what I saw was perfectly preserved. Restaurants displayed menus, arcades blared music, boutiques projected hollows of human, crate, and procyon models, and automatic doors and lifts, slideways mostly worked when I approached. One of the doors opened to let me into the control center's anteroom. It's been such a long time, said the AI. You're you're the first new thing in ages. I'm sure you're just a glitch, a recording of somebody I somehow erased, but I can't be sure. Um, I paused in front of a second set of doors, which didn't slide open for me. I looked for a keypad or other locking system and saw none. They looked like ordinary automatic doors. I can't be sure, so I'm going to be sure. Be sure of what? I felt a lump settle in my gut. Be sure I remember you. That was The
Ah,
Forever Station by Aidan Widmer.
that
I
ending,
it is very uh evil sounding at the end. Like just
right?
you can
Like
just imagine like
at
that
first it
very
just seems like you have
sorry.
a goofy AI, but in the end it's suddenly sinister.
Yeah, yeah, you've got this like you can tell there's like if you had heard this AI, that voice would be perfectly level, perfectly reasonable, telling you
Yeah.
that it is going to remember you by making sure that it never forgets you. Is like, okay, that's creepy. Um,
Yeah.
this
Oh
one,
no.
this like I really like this story. When working with flash fiction, I often run across stories where it's like my one complaint is that I wish it were longer. This one I feel still kind of the right length, but only just. Like I do kind of wish that there was a bit more time spent um, getting to know the narrator, the main character.
I
Um,
kind of understand. Yeah.
and I guess the only other thing is that sort of by virtue of it being just a vignette like this, is that we don't know anything about the main character to the point where we don't know their species, whether they're anthro or furry. So we get kind of a nod to furry with them making human crate and procyanon models in the boutiques, but it was still just very spooky, and it is Spooktober, so I will 100% give you
Yeah,
that.
that's a good feeling right now. Can't deny it.
I should have put my witch hat on, but I have my headphones on, alas.
Oh, fortunate, unfair. Well, well. But for everyone who is watching, those are our big stories for the end. I'm sorry for anyone else who was hoping we were about to read yours last or something. So sorry. These are
Yeah,
the
we
ones we
received
read.
quite a few stories, so it was tough to like actually nail them down because a lot of the stories were just great. It was just kind of finding. We had three judges, and we would come up with a list of our tops, find the overlap, and then work from there.
Yeah, so I mean, there were definitely other stories that we all had on our list that just, again, we mostly picked ones that, in one way or another, we both, like at least two of us basically picked
Yeah.
to go with on this. So now we get to have the really fun part, the battle to the death. What did Cedric say earlier about ah,
Cedric said, "Okay, I think you said something like no plushies," and Cedric was,
oh
"Oh
yeah,
no,
that's what it
Cedric
was.
said no
No,
plushies,
no,
no chair
yeah, no
shots or
chair
illegal
shots.
objects."
Yes, and no interference from your respective plushies. I've trained my plushies for nothing. Ah, but,
I didn't know,
but
so I was hoping I would have time for a training montage before we got into actually duking it out. But
so I suppose that we have to try to eliminate some stories and gets to where we want to be at the end. And pick our winner. Is there a story that you for sure think, unfortunately, is not going to make the cut?
um, I I thought that Dave Makes Some Friends was a really cute story in um in a like nice like funny, gentle, silly sort of way. But in terms of sort of in comparison against a lot of the other submissions, I liked it, but it didn't grab me quite as much. So that was going to be my pick.
I think I could agree with that. I very much like the story, and I think it would quite literally
Yeah,
be something I'd read with my kiddo.
exactly. It
But
would make a great children's book.
honestly, it absolutely would. Nenakiri, if you're hearing this, you may be onto something. Um, but yeah, I don't think that that one can be the winner. Although I will say, if you did really like that one at all, Nenakiri often submits to the Furry Writers Guild's microfiction stories every
Yes,
Monday. I
yes,
have to do my job as the president for a moment, but I mean, literally, though, he writes some absolutely other cute stories just like that. So definitely check. Um, gosh, I guess I have to try to take a cut as well. And uh, as much as it sucks, I feel like I have to go with beginner's luck. I loved the concept and it was very cute. It's a similar thing where when it comes to the other submissions, some of them either just hit harder, or we did at least have with one other very cute submission that wasn't as emotional, that just I guess that's really the best word for it. Hit harder, and especially on that one, the pandemic and everything else was very real.
yeah.
So, as much as I would love to also see a story of a sloth chef somewhere else, and I may have to take that concept someday, yeah, I think that's the one I'm gonna have to put up on the chopping block.
Okay, yeah, and again, I love the use, I love the arc in it, and I love the use of species. I think that that is like a great piece of flash fiction. Being a judge in a contest is really hard because
Oh God.
you do kind of have to, pare things down.
Yeah, like because I mean, just telling y'all in general, like if we look at the ones that didn't match and doing like a quick count out, like we all probably had at least two or three stories that like the other people didn't suggest and put on the final list. So like that's exactly it. It's so hard to just narrow it down even to like your top five. It's almost just so
right.
difficult.
Okay, so we're down
Man,
to four. Um, let's see if we can agree on one more, and then we can have a top three, and then we can work on ranking those.
all right, that seems good to me. I think this is such a tough one. This is a furry writing contest, and there is a part of me that says that the story should be pretty directly furry. Um, which I mean, to be fair, some of our top four now are not as hardcore and directly furry either. But
Yeah.
I also have a tough time deciding which one I would choose out of those two. I can look at like the Forever Station, and I can look at the Last Will and Testament of Q Sharpclaw, and at least I Miss Him Too got into it with the deers a little bit. So it's just like, do you
Mhm.
pick one of those two, even though they're both
Yeah.
excellent?
I think that I
I'm
would
not even
have to
sure.
pick keeping Last Will and Testament, and unfortunately letting the Forever Station go, because there was sort of more of the mechanics of being furry or being an anthro character in Last Will and Testament. That would be my thing. Like he talks about, the fur being sticky because it's not washed that well by the orderlies, and so that has more of a feel of furry, even if the species is not clear.
Agreed. I think we can at least agree on that one. I think we don't have to commit to blood sports quite yet. We're doing pretty well. I think I can agree to that one. It was a wonderful story. I mean, that ending was like an inst. I remember reading that and going, "This is going to be on my short list." Like right
Yeah,
at the end.
it's
I knew it would
it's a
be.
great story. It really is. Like, please don't, please understand that this is really hard to judge. So,
Yeah, this is ridiculously difficult. I'm so
okay,
sorry, Forever Station.
so that leaves us with bird problems. I miss him too, and what was the other one?
It
Last
was
will and
Last Will
testament.
and Testament. Oh, that's a that's yeah. I think this is where it finally gets really tough, right?
Yep.
Um, I suppose putting them into a top three, that does seem the best way to try to go about it,
Right.
just to try to help rank things. Oh, that's difficult. I suppose it comes, a big part of it will come down to if you value the twist ending over just how relatable Bird Problems was. Because
Yeah.
even like Last Will and Testament wasn't like a hard twist, but it was still
Right.
definitely a twist. So
Yep.
it's just like those are such classic things in furry fiction, but I don't know.
Right.
I guess I wasn't expecting to see the pandemic written so well.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and I mean, let's face it, this convention exists because of the pandemic, so I can't lie about a
Right.
soft.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that I really agree there that like the twist ending in both of the other two is fantastic. I thought that, excuse me. I thought that the I miss him too, that was really affecting and had like a little touch of ghost story about it. That used the last line twist really well. And I thought that the Last Will and Testament was just the style of that is what really brought that to life. Of just this sort of like very calm retrospective with just a little like, I don't have any money for you, but I actually took from you your full attention. Like that's a really touching concept. I really like that. But yeah, bird problems is it's just relatable.
It
It's just hashtag relatable.
incredibly right. With just how everything has gone in the world, it is wild how perfectly they got that feeling down. And again, especially in that one, when it comes to a furry anthology, they just absolutely nailed it on the furry
Right.
aspect. I can't deny that.
Yep.
We have to put one as a number three, which is awful. So
Yeah, yeah. Oh, we've got our number one. I think we agree our number one is bird problems. I
I
think
think I'm gonna agree.
I think
There's just it's impossible to not give that one a
right,
win. It's too
right.
magical.
I think I personally would vote that Last Will and Testament gets 2 because I just really like the style, and the tone is really consistent throughout, and it's really evocative. Um, and but again, like this is impossible. Like as soon as I say that, I think, but boy, wasn't
Oh,
I
it
Miss Him
was.
too evocative too? Like it's really difficult. How about you?
Uh, See, it's incredibly similar. The two of them you could flip in just two different directions. They both tug at your heartstrings, and they both, I guess, they both give you a punch to the gut. One's just, I don't want to say gentler, but one just hits you somewhere else, I guess.
Yep.
Like what one is this is absolutely like, and now he's totally trapped there alone. He's also a ghost, and
Yep.
the other is more. It's just that big emotional feeling. I I feel like I could agree with you with that in the end. If I really had to put one in second place, that last will and testament could do it just because it plays on the fact that you are a reader and reading the story. It
Yep.
literally plays on the action that you are taking to
Right.
read it. And I don't know of a story I've ever read that's done that, and that's really
Yep.
cool. So I guess if I had to give one an edge, wow, we had much less blood sports than expected. It was
Yeah.
if we had to give
I've
one
been
an edge,
holding this pen with like a death grip here, but I guess
right,
like if
just
I
like
don't
ready
have to
to
resort to
go.
violence.
Yeah, like I feel like we got very lucky on this one, but
Yep.
yeah, I think I could. I think we could put that one in the second place, and it would be pretty simple. I think we could pull that off. So I suppose then that would leave us with Bird Problems taking first, Last Will and Testament of Q Sharpclaw taking second, and I Miss Him Too taking.
And again, thank you all for submitting. Being an editor is really difficult, and having to
Right.
make these decisions is really. Um, I applaud you for applying, and I think that there's a lot of fantastic writing that crossed over our desks these last couple of days, and
Oh my gosh.
this has just been an honor being able to read such great works. So as disheartening as not winning a prize might be, you blew our socks off. So
Absolutely. And I assumed with the pandemic in general, I know how many people's writing output was low. I was like, we'll probably get 10-ish stories. Maybe we'll get 15. Then all of a sudden,
like
six
26, like
submissions.
whoa.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
dang, that was just it was so incredible. And it wasn't even just that, because like struggling with some of the writing stuff because of pandemic too, seeing that and being like, and they're pulling off this?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's just really great stuff.
See, I feel like being kind, and we should probably mention some of the let me see here, some of the other stories that potentially came up in case you guys are watching that just didn't have the matchup essentially between two judges. Going over these, we had The Portal as one of them that didn't have a final match.
Hmm.
We
Yep.
had Parents as one, Rarefied,
Yeah.
Three-Layer Apple Pie, and The Night We Met. These are all stories that at least got picked by one judge, but because we only had an hour, at some point, we had limits. So
Hmm.
as much as it'd be fun to literally read all of them, I that would have been a panel that was too long for him.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. So, like, honestly, thank you all for the pleasure of being able to read your lovely words. That's, it was fantastic. And, I encourage you to keep on writing, keep on submitting. It sounds like these will be
oh yes, I can
pulled
talk
together.
about the details on
Yeah.
this one. Yes. For anyone who did not read the contract you signed, which shame on you, but for anyone who didn't read the contract you signed, our general plan for this is to put this out as a free and accessible ebook for everybody. It's just going to be the Oxford comma Flash Fiction collection. I've got eyes on an artist who I think has volunteered to do the cover, which we usually always pay our artists, but they got
Yeah.
really, really excited and they were like, I think I really want to do this. So I was like, okay, great. I'm not going to complain. If you want to draw this cute idea you have in your head, please don't make
Please
me.
do. Yeah.
But we're going to get these all collected, get them in a free ebook, just so you also know in case you didn't notice in your contracts, unlike traditional contracts, there is no exclusivity period, you can post these to your FA. You can post these wherever you'd like. We'd
Yeah.
love you to share your stories with people. This is and For the winner, absolutely congratulations again, Ferric. If you are watching live, we will get a hold of you. May take some work, but we will get a hold of you and make sure that you do get your prize. It'll likely that and any other general information with contracts, or if we need to edit out your typos or something with edits, will probably be at you at the beginning of next month. So as long as I can get to hard work. And I think the really fun part, which you may enjoy especially as you ran the panel on formatting, is we're hoping to use the book and its formatting as a way to create a tutorial for members of the guild
Ooh,
for learning book formatting so that it can also become a permanent resource for everybody. So
excellent.
your
That was
stories
interesting.
will not only be awesome and enjoyed, and something again we're going to try to make for free, which is part of Cedric's contribution. That will be probably available through Thurston Howell or Bound Press as a just free download. Let's get this out to everybody book. But oh, and I suppose I almost forgot the best part. If you are a brand new author, one of the requirements to join the guild is either having a paid market as something you've been published in, or two unpaid markets. You are now halfway there into the unpaid markets category. You are published.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah.
And obviously, as I helped run the contest, I've seen your contracts. So if you manage to snag yourself that other publishing, join the guild. I don't have to see the proof. I think you'll be okay. It's very exciting.
It is. Yeah,
But I think that's it. Oh
yeah.
no, we still have time. What do we do?
A little dance.
All right, I'm down. See, I'm down for that. I mean, we've had the really good music playing, which I think
Yeah,
also did
yeah.
wonderful. So I suppose if you're down for it, I could try to attempt to pull up one of the other stories. We'll see what the chat thinks. Like, we can always end a little early too, but if the chat
Oh,
would
yeah.
like to hear another story, I could see which one is the easiest to pull up the quickest, and that can be the winner.
Yeah. Another, says Genkovic. I vote more stories, another stories, a dance competition, another.
Oh,
Okay, so I have one
see,
picked and open that I could read.
oh,
If you want
absolutely.
to
Go
go
ahead.
through and pick one for yourself.
All right, you
Um,
know what? That's perfect. I can pick one of the ones that didn't get the full pick on everybody else with the judges, and I assume that you could do one for yourself as well. Or
yes, yes.
perfect. All right, there we go.
I think. Oh no, where did it go?
Well, here, while you search, then I'll pick up a story. We should have enough
Okay,
time for two. Our flash
sure.
pick. The story that I'm going to share as soon as it's done loading. I had everything else preloaded and ready to go for the panel. So of course this one. There we go. This one is The Night We Met by Sasha PG. We met where we weren't supposed to be, doused in strong perfumes to hide our scent with bandanas wrapped around our muzzles. I couldn't see any inch of her face but her eyes, rich and brown. They shone in the dark as she looked at me. Our breathing was heavy but strong. We could keep going when we had to. The sirens were loud, but no red and blue flashed along the alley walls. We had time to stop. We'd gotten out. How many others had slipped through the corral? We'd seen an hour. Post bail. Come back. Fuck the pigs, she said. Must have her breath back already. I was never much of a runner before those nights. I could only nod. ACAB. She patted my shoulder as she walked back toward the street. Probably meant it to be comforting, but the weight of her hand felt like an anvil. I caught a glimpse of her arm then. She was jacked. Arms for days. I could see her muscles outlined even through her long-sleeved shirt. The type of arms that made my sapphic heart trip and fall on its face. She could deck a riot cop easily and get away with it. She stopped at the alley's entrance and perked her ears. I fought to get my breath back in order. Now was not the time to be too gay to function. Aphrodite would have to cool it for 5 minutes. I closed my eyes and counted to 5. When I opened them, she had turned back to me. She nodded out towards the street and reached out her hand. It was time to run again. and that was one of the ones that was on my list, and I couldn't help it. It was
And
a similar thing where it's
you
that
know,
sapphic heart tripping over itself.
and now is not the time to be too gay to function is like story of my life. But
Oh, that is just a mood, isn't it?
it
Just
is
absolutely
a
a
big
mood.
mood.
Ah,
I really like that one as well. The reason that wound up not on my list was again just didn't tug on the whole furry thing as well for me. So doesn't
that
need
is
to in a longer
entirely
work,
fair.
but in a furry fiction contest, I was like, well, I love this, but also yeah. So
Furries, I get that. Looking for something with a little more animals.
okay, I have um, Rarefied by Frank Lerenard. Faint, stationary, a smudge on the glass of the night sky. From the boughs of a juniper tree, the mother gray fox pointed it out to her remaining kit. It's very, very distant cloud, she said to his curious look. It glows from the lights of baby stars deep within. They shine, and the little bits of the cloud catch the light beams, and this makes them so happy they begin to shake. Sometimes their happiness overcomes them, and they shake so hard they break apart. Only by letting go of the light beams can they become whole again. If they do, the light flies away from the cloud, and sometimes it crosses all the way through the desert darkness between there and here, and sometimes those land in our eyes, and then we see them, and we see the cloud. There are other parts of that cloud we can't see. Those parts are made of the same bits, and those bits too can catch the light, and they too become excited and shake apart. But in those places, the bits are so close together that as soon as they shake to pieces, the other greedy bits come along and steal those pieces away, and the light alongside. Even if the pieces rejoin and the light is let go, it only gets taken home by some other bit. They are busy, bustling places, so they are very exciting places to be. But because of this, they cannot shine like the parts we see. Only the cloud bits that are far away from the others, that are all alone, can glow. She hugged the kit to her side, and her finger shifted down, level with the horizon, until the tip of her nail caught the faintest flecks of another distant light. That there is where your sister Mashat chose to settle. Her nail shifted again to another hilltop in the in the east, and there your brother Shuk found his place. Some day soon you will follow them, and set out into the sands in the valleys below to find yours. On that day, I will look out again across these lands and see the light from your fire shining out into the desert darkness, and you will see mine. And maybe, someday, the light from all our fires will find itself flying all the way to that cloud where maybe it will make those other lonely bits happy enough to shine back. I
Ah, that
really, I
is
really liked that. It was
absolutely.
just so calm. It was so relaxing, and just there's not really a
It's
plot necessarily, but it kind of hints at a larger plot. So
definitely. I mean, it sounds like something you would hear around a campfire, and I say that in the absolutely most positive way that I can, as someone who loves to tell stories around a campfire. It's
mhm.
wonderful. It, I guess, like in a way too, it almost sounds like something that would be like I don't want to say like a myth or legend, but you know what I mean? Like not like quite a fairy tale, but like a
Right,
story that people told.
yeah,
It
like an
has that
oral history.
to it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's it's absolutely all right. I think we've got 5 minutes left here. I mean, normally I'd be like, let's plug ourselves, but I mean, let's be fair.
no, I
The
think
authors are probably the ones for this one.
yep,
If anything, I mean, a special thank you again to Cedric who couldn't be here, and to Thurston Howell Press for making this competition work and dealing with the whole legal issues around giving people money so that the Furry Writers Guild didn't have to do that.
yep,
Um, it was very awesome of them, and I can't wait till we get to share the whole collection with you all
yeah.
because if you liked these stories, oh my gosh,
There's
there's still
so
so
many
many.
more. Yep,
All right. Well, I suppose what we'll have to do from here is let them, we'll have to face the music, literally. Just let them
yeah.
hear the music.
It's music time. All right.
No,
Well,
you did
thank you all
good.
so much, and keep on
Oh,
keeping
absolutely.
on.
Oh, wait, I can do the smart thing. The next panel is how to start and finish a novel with Kyle
Yeah.
Gold and Ryan Malta. Keep an eye out for that, and I suppose I'll see y'all at closing ceremonies. Woohoo!
Yeah.
All right, see
So
ya.
see y'all.